All right, welcome to Raising Funds for World Domination, Day 48. So here's the standard intro. No significant updates on that front. I guess moving on from the only other. Well, I'll wait till some more people get here to present the other thing I was going to talk about today. So yesterday I mentioned something about the SHA hash function and some of the something I noticed in the noise generator. There were some patterns, but I thought about it today and I reflected that it's probably this is what appears to be these streaks is probably just basically the result of like zooming in the same like noise function repeated at different intervals. So it's probably this is not necessarily in a reflection of patterns in the SHA output. That's one of the reasons I was planning to stream later or earlier today, but I was spending a bunch of time trying to reproduce that test case, and I actually pushed a version of it in a test case in the for the block mining game today, just before the stream. Dark Project says, thanks for all the videos, man. No problem. Yeah, I'm gonna try to get back to producing more of those soon. I want to finish the next. I have a couple milestones I want to finish for the block mining game. So I'm gonna just try to get those finished up and pushed out, and then maybe focus on this less. Orthoplex 64 sends a wave. How's it going? World Domination, let's go. All right, so today I continued work on some of the process of refactoring how the screen updates are applied. So again, it still doesn't look different, but there's substantial differences out of the hood. I'm trying to make it perform a bit better. It's some of the recent substantial refactoring I did made it very slow. When I added the kind of better multi-threaded support for the frames, but I'm working on fixing that today. And maybe tomorrow I'll be able to get the performance back a bit better. Although I introduced some new bugs. Now the menu, yesterday I was working on the menu, or the, inventory, and I got a little bit of progress on that. So I guess we might as well continue. Dougie Doomer says, evening dude, how's it going? What are your thoughts on Roblox developing? I don't know anything about Roblox at all. A couple of people have asked me that, but I don't, I've never played Roblox and I don't know anything about it. Now, yesterday I wrote several lines of code on this, so today let's try to make a bit more progress. how do you decide when something is good enough to leave in and when to keep tweaking it? I guess I have a decent idea of like what I'm capable of and how much time it'll take, and then I try to just I'm gonna try and hopefully wrap up what I'm working on this game thing in like the next week or so, and then maybe I don't know if I'll continue working on it daily, but I need to. I will. I've been working on it during the stream, but I've also been working on it a little bit during the day. But I'm gonna have to work on other stuff during the day for a while. Now I guess there's a couple of ways I could do this. When do you think you're going to finish the game? Release it to the public. It's already public. You can go down to the GitHub link and everything. The latest version is right there. Oh, nice. We got a super chat. Thanks for the info. $2. Well, I'm not sure my info is worth that much. That wasn't particularly good info for that fee, but thank you very much. Yeah, Roblox is. I know it's popular. I know there's a lot of people that play that game, but it's just not something I got into. What are the plans on the goal? Plans once world domination is achieved. I don't know. I guess recreate the world in my own desired image. Fix all the problems. I'm sure that'll keep me busy. See you in later days. See you later. Killer Bean says, please like the live. Thanks for the promotion. We got 3 likes. How's life been recently? Not too bad. The last rent eviction hearing was on, what was it, May 26th. So some of the cases got dismissed, which is a good sign for the future. Not mine. So we're gonna have another N13 merits hearing sometime in the future, but the date is currently unknown. So for now, we're just coasting. Weather's pretty decent. My finances are in order. So all things considered, I think it's pretty good. I had my 6-month dental checkup. My teeth are all intact. What are you trying to do? I'm currently working on some inventory improvements for my terminal-based block mining game. It's not home until there's a calzone. And still haven't tried any calzones. Your bitrate is too low. Yeah, it shows that in the warning. It basically always says that. I'm not sure if it is it a problem on your end at all, but it complains that every stream. Some coders like you have a lot of patience. I'd already given up on a project past 2 weeks. Yeah, it's key. You gotta just grind away at things forever. I mean, having said that, though, I probably, I don't know, I spend a bit too much time on things sometimes, arguably. On his side, I should say excellent. Yeah, I know it's like something to do with my bit rate is slow, but I'm not sure if it like, does it affect you guys? Is the stream like stalling or anything? Because it basically comes up with that warning every stream, and there's nothing I can do about it. Tío, ¿qué está haciendo? I don't know what that says. I have a mini PC which seems to turn off automatically after 2 days. The real kicker is that journal CTL shows no error. It just cuts off. I'm suspecting bad power adapter that I'm using. Huh. Have you ever watched it turn off? Does it just shut off completely, or does it do a graceful shutdown? Because if it's... Oh, it just cuts off at one point. What are you doing? Currently working on my terminal-based video game. It's decent video quality. Stats for it says 13,000 kbps. Yeah, that warning is happens every stream, so I just ignored it. Have you heard of MCP, Model Context Protocol? I have. I know of it, and not, I have not had a chance to play around with the AI code generation stuff. People ask me that every stream. Any new and amazing content of the way, like your immigration discussion? Lately I've not been doing any long form content. I'm getting close to like the next release of this game thing, so I'm gonna try to push through to get the bugs and remaining. Like, I want to finish this help menu thing, and then the other significant thing is I want to add the ability to see an extra layer which will be like one of the first new pieces of actual game content in like a month. But I think after this, I can, after this endless refactoring of the UI, then maybe I can actually start putting some new interesting stuff in it. And then also, yeah, hopefully I'd like hopefully no more than another week on this, and then I can start doing more interesting content. I am kind of working on a long form video idea, but try to work on that like at least a couple hours a day. But today I did zero work on it and zero work on my accounting. Yeah, for the laptop that shuts off, it could also be it could be like bad memory, maybe. Because I think you can get, depending on like how you get a bit flip, I think one way that can manifest is it just shuts off completely. Or maybe even something really bad, like a bit flipping in the CPU. The CPU gets into like a hard fault exception or something, depending on the brand of CPU and where in the CPU system it happens. But yeah, generally speaking, I think the power. I would do mem is a good. I would say if you do mem tests and like within the first 5 minutes you start getting seeing bad memory, then that's maybe related. I don't know if you've seen. I have some videos. I spent quite a bit of time on those videos, and they don't get many views on debugging bit flips in memory. So it can take, on the machine I ran it for like 10 hours before it would start showing bit flips. But then again, you could also, if it's an old machine, you could have both. You could have some bit flips. Well, I don't know. I'd say if you see bit flips, memory errors within the first 5 minutes of mem test, then I'd wager to bet that maybe the shutoffs were related to that. If you see one after like 10 hours, then I don't know, it'd be like 50-50. Maybe it's a coincidence. What do you wish people would ask that nobody ever does? That's a good question. I would say I actually don't have any response to that. How do I make a CPU? That's a very good question. I have a video on that topic, and then I also have some blog posts and some other. Actually, I have another video on semiconductors. It doesn't get many views. But looking forward to the game. Any long form content. Hopefully, the budget is going swimmingly, and the renovation is stopped. Yeah, I think we're doing. So I think like half of the N13s were rejected at the last hearing because they did not properly give out compensation checks. And that was the basis they were rejected on. Now, there's still another half of the people who, including me, who are going to be arguing it on the merits. So we don't have a hearing date yet. But honestly, I don't know. Either way, my viewpoint is either whatever happens is good. If I get to stay here, that's great. But if I did get evicted, every day I question like why do I live here in Kitchener? Maybe there's greener pastures elsewhere. I do this for a living. Crashing computer is usually CPU. My test only tests the RAM. Need Prime 95 to test the CPU. Well, you still need the CPU to read and write into RAM. In my experience, bit flips are like a lot more common than most people would say. I guess now we also do have to worry about bad CPUs with those recent wave of Intel CPUs with all the like, oxidate, like the lithography problems and the cracked CPU dies. And I've done 20 CPU swaps for every bad RAM I come across. Wow. I didn't know CPUs were getting that garbage. My understanding was it's always basically the opposite. But maybe, I don't know, have you been doing this a while? Has CPU quality gone down? Did you hear about Xorg being forked? Nope. I'm taking calls, work from home, watching you code, and have Hearts of Iron 4 on another PC playing. Excellent. Apparently forking the project was against Red Hat TOS. Interesting. I'm scared of losing my job to AI. I work for a Fortune 100 as a software engineer. Is anyone else feeling that sentiment? Or is this not a common concern? Actually, right before the stream, I watched a YouTube video of this guy. It was like a 20-something-year-old, and he was going on a big long rant. I think the video had like 200-something thousand views, and he was saying, AI ruined my life. And he talked about like he had a fairly successful TikTok channel, and then it got, he said he just can't compete with all the AI slop. And then he had like a gig job, like he studied like filmmaking and stuff. And then he kind of graduated right into all the AI slop and got laid off a couple times. And so in his line of work, it already came for him. Something related to that. And then he said he tried to like write a book or something, and he published it on Amazon, and it has 0 sales. And of course, like I can imagine now, if you publish a book, like that was already a very difficult way to make money before AI. But now with AI, you're competing with people who like, use AI to find the right topic, and like competing in that market. Even if your book is good, I think the people that win are the people with good marketing game, as opposed to people with quality content. But that's not economically productive. Find some secret knowledge that could grind the company to a halt. That can be one strategy, but companies are also stupid. Like there's tons of people all the time who are like, man, this company won't fire me because they'll be totally screwed if they fire me. And then they fire the person, and then the company is screwed, and then it implodes. Can you give me some advice on how to make custom memory allocator? I guess one question would be why you want to do custom memory allocator. Is it for like some efficiency reasons, or I think the ideal thing is to not write your own, but if you have to, I guess it depends what constraints you're under. That would be the only reason. If you're under some constraints that require you to write a custom memory allocator. AI is a tool for developers, not a replacement. Yeah, AI is definitely not a replacement for developers yet. Like in the stuff that I've used it for, like it's, we need more of that like model context protocol before I'm really even willing to waste a lot of time trying it in the first place. Roman Zedrick says, sup. There's a process on world domination. It's going pretty good, actually. I've been raising some funds every day, getting some mark down in the block mining simulation game. Running Prime 95. I'm curious if that'll reveal anything. CPUs are getting more complex, more cramped. Same space. I've been repairing computers for 5-6 years, and RAM still breaks. But from my experience, I come across many more bad CPUs. Interesting. I'll keep that in mind. My impression was that memory failed way more than the CPUs. I remember in university reading about this article about like IBM had this famous CPU design with a bug in it, and it added numbers wrong or something, and it was super famous and had a Wikipedia page. But now, like, I guess most of the batches of CPUs are defective garbage. We don't even write a Wikipedia article about it. Maloc's too slow. So I would say you probably want to think about how you use malloc, or the number of calls you make, because it is in like a normal, like unless you're writing an embedded system like an Arduino or something, it's unlikely that you are going to write your own faster malloc, because malloc would be hooking into the kernel and like doing like manipulations of the page table. And unless you're running your game with like kernel access and managing the page tables, then you are not going to beat malloc, because any kind of to emulate malloc in pure user land, you're gonna have to do like linear time operations and like move stuff around so malloc can reduce like external fragmentation and stuff by like remapping page tables and stuff at runtime, whereas you're not able to do that as a user program. I like how a giant fraction of CPU dies just branch prediction. Is it? I don't quite know how advanced that stuff is now. For my engine, for geometry parser that allocates dynamic geometry. Yeah, I would say you probably want to rethink, like minimize the number of times you call malloc, and maybe like you could maybe allocate big blocks at once, and then I guess in that case you are kind of managing your own memory, but you're also like allocating a larger block for a longer period of time, which interferes with other applications. Autistic Stoner says, "Hello, Robert. How's it going? If malloc is a bottleneck, you should probably restructure things to allocate fewer and larger rather than re-implement malloc." Do you try TC? Yeah, I was just going to mention there's probably some other. There's probably a whole bunch of other like variations of malloc. I don't know them, but there's probably you can look into I'm sure there's some Linux kernel documentation for like other variations of the malloc function that maybe have different efficiency and contracts. You can maybe look into those. I can't say much about them though. Prime 95 will show math errors, floating point. Run the torture test. In embedded, we aren't supposed to use malloc at all. In an embedded system, you can often just get away with like write your own malloc and then just have like a 1 kilobyte array, and you just hand that out, because maybe in an embedded system you're only doing like one malloc call. Running it with default settings, which is a blend of torture test. I was thinking that how to manage it effectively. I can allocate a gigabyte of memory up front. Well, the other thing is like if you do allocate a large block, the question is, does that even help you? Because it's possible, like if you allocate a large enough block, like if you allocate a super large block that exceeds the amount of physical RAM you have, then it's going to be constantly thrashing. Like if you're doing total random access, it's going to be thrashing onto the disk all the time, and that's going to give you like absolutely horrible performance. Yeah, it depends. Depends how much you need and what kind of access pattern you have. Because the smaller, like if your program is written in such a way that you're accessing only like 2 megabytes, certain 2 megabytes at a time, and it's not like physically local, then that can be stored high up in the cache. It should show up almost instantly. The logs are a bit Weird to read. GNU Maloc apparently has a bug that can cause memory leaks. Interesting. And embedded, usually Maloc is banned. Yeah, usually the preference is to try and do stuff on the stack, but for a lot of a lot of embedded systems are actually simple programs, so it's not uncommon to see like, you know, hand done implementations of like a printf that's like, it's a crappy printf that doesn't support all the, you know, like there's some handwritten version of how to print a decimal number and convert binary to decimal, and or some like, you know, basic implementation of Maloc. It depends how sophisticated your embedded system is. If you actually have like access to virtual memory and page tables and stuff, then Maloc becomes a lot easier. How's the process on world domination? It's pretty good. Everyone now has more than a gigabyte of RAM. Yeah, that might be okay to allocate a gigabyte. You could maybe do some experiments. Like depending on what you're doing, you may, I would say like don't write thousands of lines of code and then test it. Write some simple like toy program to just test the like access pattern that you're anticipating, because you may find that there's going to be some bottleneck you haven't thought of. You'll have to design around that. What's the lifetime of objects in the allocation? That's a good question. Just for a factor if you're needing to rethink Maloc. Yeah, I think it's if you're thinking about like writing your own Maloc, it's not just a problem of like that, you know, maybe you shouldn't rewrite the library function yourself. It's also the fact that Maloc is more powerful than you are, because you can do things like if you have fragmentation of the memory, Maloc, because Maloc has handed out pointers to pages, you can make changes at runtime to move around, because the page tables map the physical memory to the virtual memory, so you can move around pages at runtime in the operating system inside of Maloc. So if someone allocates a big block, but you have no large contiguous blocks, Maloc is able to move that memory chunk around, but keep the pointer that it previously handed out valid. Like basically, imagine if you had an access pattern. So like you've got 8 gigabytes of RAM, and then someone allocates a 1 kilobyte block in each of those 8 gigabytes. So you have one program, A.out or something, has a 1 kilobyte block that's somewhere randomly in those each individual 8 gig. And then someone comes along and says, hey, I want 4 contiguous gigs of memory. If you're doing that purely in user space, you can't satisfy that because you've already handed out the pointers for those 4 blocks. And so if you swap them around, now the address is wrong. The data that's stored at that location is undefined. But if you're inside Maloc, you can just you can move those things by changing entries in the page table. Remembering he said Maloc was too slow. He might be calling it every frame for geometry data. Yeah, I would say look for stuff like that. Like there may be some silly thing where you're calling it like thousands of times. You're not going to dominate the world and destroy it, right? Nope, I'm gonna fix it. All right. Anyone read the new AI paper by Apple? It basically says an AI tech has already peaked and it will never reach a certain level of complexity and cannot think. Interesting. That's kind of reassuring. I've kind of grown. My opinion now is I think that algorithmically, I think the intrinsically in the algorithms that we have now, like with the large language model and the kind of multimodal, like the ability to understand the images and stuff we have now. I think what we have now, we have the algorithmic capability for general AI, but for like this, kind of runaway singularity like general AI, I think we have that now. But the question about whether that manifests, I think, is going to be a limit on the data. Because if you have it's like if you have you could ask, like, do you know everything there is about how to build a house? If you have like a couple pieces of lumber and some like rocks and a piece of cement, like, you probably can't. You still don't have enough. There's not like enough information in that to actually go all the way. And I think it's hard for me to intuit about, but it might be that we have there's just like we still need way more data about the universe, and like we need more empirical evidence. I mean, a better example would maybe in theoretical physics, there's still phenomena like the Large Hadron Collider. They're constantly trying to go to higher energies to get more data points, and then as soon as they get those data points, they can build better models. But until we actually know what's real, that we cannot improve upon the standard model unless we have but as soon as we discover that particle, immediately we can come up with new theories and test them, and there's immediately action you can take. It's true with all the problems, complexity grows and grows. Paper calls this collapse of reasoning. In my use, I haven't done a lot of the coding stuff. I need to actually do that, but I just don't have the bandwidth at the moment. The stuff I've seen of image generation is very impressive. Like, its ability to actually understand what I'm asking for and give me like stuff where it gives me like a standard stock image of someone smiling. That's not impressive. But when I ask for like specific things and specific arrangements, and then I say like change it like modify this image in such a way, and it actually does it. It's pretty impressive to me. Don't ever read newspapers like this, but it's worth a read. It's sad, but if you read it, you'll likely be in the top 1% of people who understand AI globally. Yeah, I mean the average person is like there's a tsunami heading for the average person in society now. Like even me, like I'm aware of where AI and stuff is, but I was using Grok to generate AI images, and those were, I thought those were impressive. And then I switched to, I've been using ChatGPT lately for AI image generation, because when I first started, it didn't generate them, and then I just was talking to someone, and they're like, "Oh yeah, ChatGPT does image generation now," and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know that." And so I started using it, and it's much slower, but in my opinion, the output is like it's very impressive to me. Wow. Another game dev chat. You're too generous. That's another $10. I will send as much positive energy to your stock options trades as possible, such that you may be blessed with many riches. And may the Lord deliver you from predatory brokerage firms that try to trigger your stop losses. Triggered some today. Well, make sure you make sure your finances are all in order. Well, I don't know. It seems like we've been on the edge of like a recession for years, but who knows? So one of these days, like something's gonna collapse. Apparently, I think what was it? A Canadian, like some kind of a bank or credit firm or something. They said like they processed like bankruptcies and stuff. I think personal bankruptcies, and last year they were covering like 1 billion worth, and this year it's like 7 billion. So they're seeing like a 7 billion, seven times increase in the number of like, assets and people who are going into liquidation. And I think there's the early signs of this Canadian housing market going to collapse. I mean, the government could try to pop up the market again. I think they're running out of juice to squeeze out of people. So we may go into a phase where people have to hold on to their money. Maybe stress test by watching Robert's stream on mini PC. Definitely test the RAM at least. When testing RAM, and I'm sure also CPU because it's all silicon. When it's hotter, is there a specific time of day when it turns off? I've run mem tests for as much as like 10 hours before it found a single error. I've experienced situations where I turn it on, and it's only after it gets up to it'll have no errors at all, and it's at a specific temperature. When it starts to get bad, the other is I guess you said it's a laptop. Bad capacitors are another source of. Actually, if you watch my what causes bit flips in memory video, have you seen that one? Yoshikage. That one has go into all the different kinds of like hardware issues and lithography problems, and that was another video that took a long time and didn't get many views. Error usually shows up quickly. Yeah, I would say like if you have bad memory, like if the memory is really bad, if it's bad enough to cause errors quickly, then you'll probably see it like on a cold boot within 5 minutes. But if it's I have seen ones where it's like you have to have the computer on and running for like 8 hours. And so I think it's mainly about getting it up to the right operating temperature. Because then once you cross like a threshold of certain operating temperature, then it starts throwing bit flips like statistically much more frequently. And I think that kind of that logic would also be basically the same for the CPU. And if you want to get super hypothetical, other ways like the you can have tons of issues within the CPU, but then also the contact points, like if the CPU is not fixed, if there's like a pin that's not making good contact or a piece of crap on it, can be at a certain temperature as the metal expands and stuff. The like thermal, the resistive properties of that, like the interface between the pin and the CPU can change that resistivity at a certain temperature. So that's another thing to consider. D40 commitment is real. It's day 48. No D GPU. Isn't a laptop. Okay, if it has is it old? I think you said it was older. It can have another thing to look for is if it has electrolytic capacitors on it that are bad. If you see any, if the top of them is like kind of protruded out like popcorn or something, that's another definite thing that'll cause issues. I'm going forward with the area memory allocator approach. Yeah, sounds good. Just do some experimenting, some like low fidelity experimenting with. I'd say most likely, without knowing exactly what you're doing, it might be just down to like you may be calling malloc way too much. Because like if you let's say you call malloc to get like 4 bytes of memory like 1 billion times, versus if you allocate all that memory at once, it's not just the efficiency of calling it. You're also causing lots of fragmentation, and there's like data structures that are created. Running GPU-Z will run CPU if it doesn't have dedicated GPU. Should heat up real quick. Why doesn't it work? Oh, that's why. Forgot what I was doing. They are real? Not sure what that's in reference to. Robert, what's your favorite choice of stack for web? Honestly, I haven't done too much web development in the last few years. Back in 2014, that was kind of when I got soured on it with all the millions of web frameworks. If I was going to do a project today, I would probably do the front end in just like React. React is pretty tried and true, and there's lots of prior art on it. I know there's a whole bunch. I think from what I understand, the state of the art of React is there's next.js is like the standard thing for it, and there was also I think there's several different things like for managing the state and like propagating it up and down the tree that I knew about. There was React hooks. I never actually got into trying that. And then I think React hooks went away and that got merged into Next.js or something. But I just haven't been doing it enough to really have a strong opinion. So that would be front end web. I'm old school. Don't use any new stuff. Yeah, I'm probably the same. The problem is like there's just too much new stuff, and the question I always ask is like, why learn this new framework? People be like, oh, well, you got to learn this. Everyone's like, everyone's been learning a new framework for years. Like, I'm going to learn this stupid framework, and then they're going to stop using it. So I would probably, the stack I would do would probably is Postgres, and then I would probably, I've invested a lot of time in learning Java and becoming decent at it, so I'd probably continue with that. Sound like CPU is okay unless it's related to graphics. Rendering mechanism. Yeah, that's a tough one. Randomly powers off. I guess if you really want to debug it, you could maybe try recording it, put like a webcam on it, and just record it when you think it's likely to shut off. Try and shut off. And if you can just get if it glitches out or something, like put same you could like, if you want to scientifically evaluate it, put something on it that like some animation, so you can tell if it's like frozen or something. So if it's just like, if it's running perfectly fine and then it just shuts off, that tells you one thing. If you see it like go into the shutdown sequence, like it could actually be a software initiated shutdown still. It could be some weird thing. And if you see some like, I don't know, something other than that, like some BIOS flash for a second or something, or if the animation freezes for like 2 minutes before it shuts off, that would also be another failure mechanism. King of the Hill says, yo, how's it going? Well, if it passes the benchmarks, then that'll rule out like a very high frequency bit flip or something. I think if you run memtest for 5 minutes, or like one of these benchmarking tools for 5 minutes, and that doesn't show a problem, then it's probably unlikely that it'll cause a reboot or failure during idling. Because under idling, it's not under a lot of stress. It's not like, exploring all the state space of various things. Like when I had that computer with where it would take like 8 hours to get a mem test fail, that computer would work perfectly fine for like a long time if I wasn't doing anything with it. And the way I thought something was wrong was I was compiling the GCC compiler with the GCC compiler, and it was like taking hours and stuff like that, and then throughout the process it would randomly crash. So that's the kind of thing you need to activate those kind of rare memory bit flips. Because if it's just like one specific bit on a given place in the RAM, you may not even activate that at all. It might take like, months, or it might never activate if it's just sitting there idling. Ever used Gentoo Linux? I've not. Is the website okay with just HTML, CSS, maybe a touch of Java? Depends what you mean by okay. I think it's sufficient to make a website. Yeah, like Christopher said, I'd probably check those logs as well. You said that you had entered UWO as a mature student. How was your maths and science-based education prior going in? Did you tread water once attending? So I did okay. I had bad marks in high school, but I was always very interested in STEM. I took some like refresher university courses that were actually through the University of Waterloo. They were supposed to be refresher courses. But I think in Ontario they have like a grade 13 or something. So when I took the refresher courses, they were not at all refresher courses for me. They was just like completely new material. And then university actually started from where my refresher courses left off. So I would have been, like, my high school absolutely did not prepare me for university at all. And yeah, I would say I was treading what I worked a lot at it. I spent a tremendous amount of effort studying and trying to catch up and stuff like that. And I guess eventually it did kind of, university was the first environment I had with like a good educational institution. My high school was just not, like, we had some people teaching math in my high school who just have no idea. Like the teachers would have, the students would have to teach the teacher how to teach the course, how to teach the math in high school. It was pretty bad. And then they would like quit halfway through the term. It's missing logs? Oh, missing logs. Exactly at 8 a.m. The log's cut off. Huh. If it's exactly 8 a.m., maybe it's there's a cron job triggering or something. Anything with like a specific number, I'd be kind of suspicious. Maybe it's there's something triggering it. I was crap in high school myself. You'll pull up a computer in front of me, I'm all game. Yeah, I think that's it's a common story. The public education system is fails a lot of metaphorically fails a lot of students, and I think it's getting worse. 8 a.m. is just an example. It happens randomly. First time it happened 11 a.m. Oh, okay. I don't know. Are there any diagnostic tools? Like, I'm sure the motherboard. Like, I know in a Raspberry Pi, I see in my error logs all the time it's complaining about, say, like power supply under voltage and stuff. Is there any Are there any metrics or like BIOS? Are there any like, testing tools or like things to probe the power supply? Like the BIOS, I think would have some basic information about, like I've seen before, if you have a power surge, sometimes the BIOS will turn on and be like, this device has experienced some weird anomaly with the power. So it has some awareness of like if there's a voltage spike or something. I guess you also specified it. Maybe it's the charger or something. I guess if you have a spare charger, you can always swap it out and then for a couple of days and see if it try to isolate it down to that. Good to hear you had set resolve. Many students wash out after having a successful high school run. I did not get good marks in high school. Actually, I failed most of grade 10, and then I actually had to go to summer school to get caught up again. Rolled with the punches. Yeah, I was very interested and motivated in university, so that went a long way. Graphics rendering when it usually pushes the board and PSU to the max. No good way to test them directly without knowing good board and PSU. Yeah, I assume there must be also like if the power supply is failing, like if the power supply has a bad capacitor in it, it may not be like regulating or filtering or something, or it can be like it might have be passing too high of a voltage, or it's not. There's like some ripple effect or something. And I wonder if there's something in the BIOS that can tell you that. Yeah, it's be worth Googling to see if there's any. I would assume by now there must be some way to. Some kind of software diagnostic tool that can talk to BIOS and say like, are you reporting nominal voltages? Have you done much API design, non-HTTP, TCP, TLS, and if so, what languages? I guess it depends what you mean by API design. I think about like almost every programming problem is a bit of an API design problem. network API. Kind of, I guess. I have worked on some projects where we had to make some servers that would process packets. That project, and it was kind of we had like an existing system that was just, it was horribly designed, and we had to kind of like support it and kind of incrementally refactor it, and then we were in the process of merging it to a better design, and then the company collapsed, and there was all sorts of drama and stuff. But I guess not really much that's been public. Or nothing that's gotten substantial like public traffic or notoriety. For Pi, you could easily insert a module that monitors power consumption, report back through GPIO opens. Yeah, I think this is just he's a desktop he's working with, so it's probably not an option. No good way to test the PSU of motherboard, sadly. Best way is to run Prime 95. Yeah, I guess the other, if you want to get super like technical and to go probing around, you could always like try if you have a multimeter, you could try testing the voltages of some things and go poking around, but then just be careful you don't short anything out. Your protocol buffers is good for that sort of design. Interesting, I'm not familiar with that term. I have a stack of boards and a good PSU specifically for testing customer PCs. Yeah, until I got into learned a bit more about analog stuff, I never really realized how important good power regulation is. Let's see, I've done, I worked on that one project where it was, that was basically like a TCP server with some public facing stuff, and that was just a garbage server. Like there was like there were all kinds of like port scanning and hacking tools that run, and it was like people were probing it, and that was making it crash sometimes, and so we fixed some of that stuff up. It was not particularly challenging to improve upon the existing thing, and then I guess with this game, I do have like I don't really want to call it a multiplayer client, but I have like a networked version for sending and receiving the messages, and that's pretty simple. There's only like 4 or 5 different messages. But in terms of, I know like actual game development requires like a lot of sophistication in order to make it low latency. So which is why they use like UDP and fancy protocols. Well, I guess it's either UDP or TCP, or I guess there's what is it? The newest one is Quick, which I guess runs on UDP, I think. I thought you mentioned a Pi. I think we're talking about Yoshikage has a desktop computer that's rebooting randomly. He's trying to figure out why. We were thinking maybe it's power. Multimeter is not realistic approach for most. Yeah, you don't have to know what you're looking. You have to look at what. Yeah, I guess the only thing, if you can catch something ridiculous on if there's like one capacitor that's bad, you can maybe figure that out. But I'd say maybe eliminate the other stuff first. Can computers get damaged from shorts still? I thought it rebooted if you accidentally shorted it. I think if the power supply so because there's like multiple shorts that you could have. So for example, if you like a normal desktop computer, it's only got like 12. I think the highest is like a 12-volt rail. So if you went in and you shorted it right to ground, so you like, you know, take open a wire or a metal pin or something, and you take a wire, you short it directly to ground. Theoretically, I believe, and you know, don't try this. Doesn't come with warranty. What should happen is, if the power supply has the proper specification, it will, I guess, probably shut off, or it's supposed to have some fail-safe so that it does not supply an infinite amount of power, because it'll exceed some current limit for some brief amount of time, and then some fail-safe is supposed to kick in for overcurrent. Now, if you go onto the board and there's like 2 points on the motherboard, and you like say, I think they have some bit of coding and stuff on them, but if you like scratch some of the coding off and you short circuit two components, you could, I think, theoretically still you could deliver enough juice so it could be a fairly low current short, and you could short together two components on the board, and that could permanently damage them. It really depends where, like even if you, I don't know what the current limit would be, but the power supply is supposed to be able to deliver, say, for 12 volts, enough current to run your devices. So I don't know, maybe like 3 amps or something like that. I don't know, that might be the limit. You have to check the spec for sure. But if you short something, if there's some other, for example, like a data bus, many devices like hard drives, for example, will have pins that are, one pin is power and the next pin is data. And if you like put a paperclip on it and short that at 12 volts up to like, and it, you know, say it's only a couple amps or something, if you're putting power through the data pins into some device like a hard drive, you can definitely damage that. So that would, if your goal is to damage the computer, that would probably be the best strategy, is if you strategically short power, mix your power up with your data lines, and that's probably the best way to damage things. Can damage itself due to low voltage. I think that's low voltage is probably less dangerous, but I think you probably still can get like data corruption and stuff, like firmware problems. What? Which laptop? There are high voltage and low voltage mixed. Yeah, I think the power supply, it's usually like 12 volts, 5 volts, and 3.3. And so if you mix those up, and I think there's also issues you can get with, like, if you mix some of the cables that come with power supplies from different vendors. I think some of them, there's a way to screw yourself there. I think actually there's a Linus Tech Tips where I think one of the Linus Tech Tips people was talking about that problem. I don't build enough computers to know exactly, but what code are you using? This is Java. I was thinking of the motherboard. I guess any component that has a like power to it, if you know what you're doing, if your goal is to damage the computer, like I would say, if you take two random points on the motherboard and short them together, like touch them, but like just take a copper wire and touch two random points, I would not be surprised if nothing bad happens. However, if you know what you're doing and you know like the scale layout and schematic, and you're like, I want to damage this thing, you can almost certainly find 2 points on there where if you short them together, you will definitely damage it. And that's going to be mostly like taking, say, a voltage rail that's higher, that's like, say, a 12 volt, and connecting that to a 5 volt. That might result in no damage, but if it does result in damage, you should not be surprised. 12 volt on 1.3 BIOS will kill the BIOS. I've killed GPU by shorting. Screen backlight with data lines. Yeah, that's the big one. It makes, if data lines touch power lines, then you're gonna have problems. Saying goodnight to every streamer, since tomorrow is the last day of school, so I'm finna be good night. Have a good night. Enjoy the end of school. Summer break starts soon. To prevent shorting the power rails to your PC, you should make sure it's clean, dust free. I recommend using dish soap, and make sure it's on the way it cleans the fans. I'm not sure that's the best strategy. I do not recommend or endorse that, but to each his own. I've also burnt Super I/O when accidentally short charging ports, 19 volt to the data line. In your TCP example, what language? And did you say we're doing TCP for networking with this game also? Yeah, I'll probably start off with TCP. I kind of think my networking is probably going to be too slow initially. Like, it's not going to be good, but I'll probably just make it functional and correct. And then, as necessary, like, explore other stuff to make it. Because swapping TCP for UDP, if necessary, is not a huge deal. And for the TCP thing that I did, that was in C and C++. Sometimes I sprinkle metal shavings on my PC and boot it up. That way I know if it can conduct electrons sufficiently. It's nonsense. Dish soap only for the worst boards. The ionized water works great. Yeah, game dev chat. Are you I guess researching into the process of like doing the networking layers for games? In terms of like, I guess like building like in terms of the protocol, the application layer stuff. I would say I'm not really that. I don't know what the state of the art. Like there's numbers of common problems of like synchronizing stuff between client and server. I would say I'm not super qualified to talk about that. I know of some stuff like eventual consistency and optimistic locking and some. I took like a distributed systems course in university, but in terms of like game specific knowledge, there's probably like if you've done any video game specific networking, you probably already know more than I do. I do know a decent amount about like the kind of lowest level, like raw sockets and stuff. There's a C++ tutorial on Linux networking called Beej's Guide to Network Programming. I think it's Beej's Guide to Networking, and I strongly recommend that. They made us read that for our distributed systems course. I found it quite enlightening. Thinking of getting a chip in my hand. I guess it could be useful if you have an application for it, but speed up PC by adding metal shavings. Extra 50% speed if you use titanium. Troll face. I'll add it to my to-do list. I don't know if I'll get around to that. Socket programming is really simple in Python. Also, it is basically simple wrapper around socket C. Yeah, I've done some socket programming in Python as well. We worked at a project with something called ZeroMQ. In terms of like learning, I think it would actually maybe even be easier to learn it as the like through the C API, because the Python stuff is like you said, it's like basically a thin wrapper, and I find it's really hard to find information. Like it's hard to find documentation and descriptions on the Python API, and what you will realize if you start like really trying to figure it out, you're like, oh, okay, it's basically a thin wrapper. So then you just to learn how to use the Python API, you have to read about how to use the C API, because that's basically what you're using. And there's a few, I think there were a few subtle differences. I can't remember what they are, but like a few subtle semantics about, like if your process, I remember debugging a deadlock, a distributed deadlock, where we had a test. If the test, there was a race condition where if the test exited too early, it would terminate the process, and then it would not send the fin packet. So it would tear down the socket before it sent to like command to the rest of the system to telling it to exit and gracefully close down, but there was no errors. And I remember that was something I wasted a lot of time on. One time I spilled beer into my gaming laptop. Ever since, it'll randomly shut down if I physically pick it up or move it sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe all the beer and metal shavings might have something to do with the random shutdowns. Since I wanted to get into web hosting, you'd like this as a kill switch, shut down all servers and the network. The chip in your hand, you mean? I guess you still gotta have power and some communication to get the signal out there. I know there's people who've done that for like with RFID readers or something. They come into work, they put a chip in their hand, so they just wave it in front of something and they can go in. Python docs are pretty great. IDK, what you're talking about. My experience was they were pretty anemic, and that like in order to actually learn how it worked, I had to go and read the C documentation, because that's ultimately where like it was a kernel API. By that I mean specifically the like C sockets programming. Now, having said that, thinking about this was 2013 back when I was doing this, so the state of the documentation then might have been a lot worse than now. I live in my data center. That sounds like a fun place to live. Someone needs to sell a cereal brand beer and metal shavings. I don't know, some of your entrepreneurial ideas are questionable, Brad. I was curious, I've done a nonsensical amount of low-level socket programming. I'm just always amazed at how many devs only know HTTP for client server, and I've never opened a socket. Yeah, I did. I have done a few deep dives into it, like having to go into like do like some packet captures and stuff like that. On there was actually an interesting problem I had to debug. I had to log into their production server and do a packet capture on like their live production data, and then from that I ended up we figured out that there was actually some kind of like idle connection timeout with their internet service provider that was closing connections, and then what it was doing, their ISP would reallocate a given IP to a different device, and then it would start a conversation, and because we were trying to minimize data transfer, it wouldn't talk for like 10 minutes or something. It would not send the key lives, and then the internet service provider would remap that connection to a different device that was also idle. And I figured this out because I traced the TCP packet numbers, where I see like one device would be coming through with data here, and then it would reappear on the connection from another device, and that was causing it to go completely nuts, because it was seeing like from the perspective of the device, mid TCP stream, it would see like a totally ridiculous TCP packet sequence number, and then so it would think it like missed a bunch of packets, so it's like, oh, give me all the packets, and then it would start sending like crazy amounts of data, and then we'd have to reset the connection because it would waste a ton of data, and that was a crazy problem. And then I remember we actually ended up getting in contact with the ISP and asking them if like this was happening, and they're like, no, it's not happening, and then we basically effectively proved that it was, and we just had to the thing is the keep lives actually cost us money, so we were trying to minimize them, but I think we set them to like 10 minutes or something. Or what are the 4 minutes and 50 seconds? Or do you have a when you pull out cot the data center that you live in? Got a server screaming in my ears 24/7 by my bed. That's how I fall asleep. That's pretty close to a data center, I guess. NAT table full. I think it was the ISP trying to. They were just like recycling idle connections on our IP out block. You're probably using 2.7. Yeah, it was probably 2.7. Don't do that. Very bad for your ears. It's probably good white noise to fall asleep to. Can I join you on World Domination? Sure. This is the World Domination Club here. Become a member to join the World Domination Gang. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, for as little as $1, you can become a channel member. Do we get weapons? Maybe like metaphorical weapons. We have to comply with the law until we get the law changed. Now we will kill with kindness. We'll just be so nice to everyone that they'll just let us take over. I'm the only one with access to the systems. So it's only allowed us to put them up. Remember my name. Hardrick Sharma. I'll conquer Europe in the future. All right. I'll make a note about that. U.S. law is more permissive than Canada. It's true. Actually, I don't even know what our laws are with respect to that stuff. Wear some ear protection. Okay, that's decent. If you're sleeping just like if it's like a desktop server or something, it's maybe not too bad. But if it's like an actual data center, that would be pretty. If it's like maxed out fans all the time, that would get pretty annoying. Morning shower or night shower? Usually I shower after exercise. Who would win in an arm wrestling contest? Rocky Linux versus OpenSUSE. I have no idea. Needs a kill switch so you know what he's hosting. I hope whatever you're proposing is a law-abiding material. I have one server for everything, with no redundancy or backups. Takes a real man to live life on the edge. That's true. That's true. Bravery right there. Wants to run an ISP for Hippiezone. I'll be on tour, but all legal. Well, I hope you're engaged in strictly illegal activity. Some of your operating requirements are suggestive of some sketchy things and sketchy motivations. But as long as you just want to talk about the tech details here, that's fine. pretty expensive to become an ISP. Putting cables underground for miles. There are some like small indie ISPs. I have no idea how they get their start or what their business model is. Well, whatever you are, as long as you just want to talk about technology stuff here, if you're talking about any kind of weird stuff, I'm gonna have to ban you. Or you're talking about keyloggers and some other crazy stuff. My hope is that he's just someone curious about technology. Is that putting the list of so that you've asked about keyloggers, about malware, about hosting things on all kinds of sketchy underground websites. What do you think about Pegasus and the future of other super sophisticated spyware that undermines privacy? I think the actual serious concern we should have. There's a lot of like a lot of the arguments about privacy and surveillance and stuff like that are centered around like human rights and invasion of privacy and stuff. I think the actual biggest problem of the surveillance state, of like this constant awareness that everything is hackable and everything's open, is actually national security. And a good example of that is there was some, like, the more we allow this kind of unfettered total surveillance, the easier it is for your adversary to just gain access to everything. And that has already happened there was I think some like low-level police officer or something who had access to some, I think it was like it was some like tool that the police use for gaining access to people's stuff, and this random low-level police officer got hacked, and so the hacker got access to his system, and was able to I think they were able to start bypassing like two-factor authentication en masse for a bunch of people, and it was I don't remember the details, but you can probably, if you Google for those terms, you can probably find something about it. And the more we like, if it should not become possible to hack some like very low-level government employee and just get access to everything, because then our adversaries can do that. I think even within those organizations, like I think even within militaries and stuff like that, when things are properly kept secrets, like even some specific branch, not everyone who even works on the same project knows about it. Because every time you share information, it's an opportunity for it to be stolen or leaked. I use the NSA tool Hydra to build in Java. I've used Tor, which is built by the U.S. Navy. Was Tor built by the U.S. Navy? As far as I know, these services are legal. Same with Keylogger. Perfectly fine to run on your own machine. Yeah, that's the key thing. Tor isn't sketchy, just has sketchy activity. Ever since YouTube came out, I listen to music on YouTube. I have not, and I don't watch movies, so I honestly I've not even had to download stuff in years. So I never even used Tor. Nothing wrong with being curious. Just when you start asking for a certain pattern of things, I mean, either you're a curious kid or you're someone who's interested in some things that are not particularly savory, that I'm not in support of. A bunch of people had crypto stolen with cracked 2FA SMS verification, for example. Yeah, that's going to become a bigger problem. Like there needs to be some kind of like two-factor authentication is going to become more and more important, and it's almost becoming like more important than your driver's license. Going late tonight, huh? Oh yeah, I should go to bed. The Navy made it. Oh, okay, interesting. What keyboard do you use? I use my garbage laptop keyboard. They created Onion Protocol, which is the core of Tor. Interesting. 24, lived a good portion of my life in the coop. Dang it, you reminded him about going to bed. I should try to fix my thing. Yeah, that's all messed up. Yeah, let's see if that fixed the X offset. Really don't get to learn about computers in the loony bin. I would imagine not. Let's go until sunrise. That's a lot of work. All right, why is this not? They made it so they could protect U.S. intelligence, communication online. Oh, I thought it was like some kind of like open source privacy kind of thing, but for all of those projects, it's not surprising at all if there's the government's involved. Learn a lot by messing around with security, especially networking and privilege escalation, circumventing antivirus detection. Feel very powerful then. Yeah, that stuff is like modern hacks are can get pretty insanely complicated, especially when people end up going into like, you know, finding pointer use after free errors in the Linux kernel and stuff. And all right, that is looking like a pretty good inventory menu. Nice, it actually does some wrapping. So it doesn't go over the menu now. Nice. Oh, it kind of does. It's much better. On my own machines only. Yeah, I would assume the majority of people who take the time to like actually become that sophisticated with this stuff is, you know, I think you'd be silly to not use it for some good purpose. About like with the amount of money you could make as a white hat compared to you know, screwing around trying to steal money and get caught and deal with all that stuff. I'm confused. How specifically is malware capable of escaping privilege? That's just the general concept of privilege escalation. Malware exploits design flaws in software. Details vary by exploit. Yep, that's basically it. The thing is that the privilege mechanisms are implemented by software as a part of the operating system. So you just have to find a flaw in the operating system. C is full of mistakes, malicious exploit. So many malware due to improper handling of strings in C. That's why everyone talks about Rust all the time. I've heard of Project Torpedo. I've not. Well, I'll probably have to call it tonight. Bro did not just say that. Say what? Who said what? I don't know. I'll stay around for 30 more seconds. You said Rust? I can't help it. People are constantly coming in here trying to brainwash me into using Rust. But it's everyone is Yoshi but C? Okay. Well, he's not necessarily wrong. Anyway, I'll probably cut it there for tonight. And as usual, we will continue with the world domination work tomorrow. Later, guys.